My own doctor said, like, he didn't have a single Jehovah's Witness patient that he saw that wasn't on antidepressants, right? And that's a pretty common thing.
Those feelings of anxiety and depression are compounded by the fear that breaking the rules or leaving the organization will result in them being disfellowshipped and shunned by friends and family.
This was a statement from an EX-JW who had been disfellowshipped. In a faith that calls itself spiritual paradise, that statistic should be impossible. But behind the smiles at literature cards and tight Sunday meetings, a mental health epidemic festers. Former members speak of panic attacks, of nightmares so vivid they woke up trembling, of despair so deep that some, like the young woman, tried to end her life 3 times before turning 17. This is the story the Watchtower doesn't want told. If you are new here, welcome to the channel that many religious leaders wish you never discover. I am Dr. K, a theologian, polemist, author, and international consultant. In addition to 3 other degrees, I hold 2 PhDs and a degree in theology with distinction. Now, these qualifications are not just letters on the walls. They're the reason I can dissect doctrines with precision and expose how religious institutions twist scripture to deceive and control millions. If you're ready to watch sacred myths and revel under scrutiny, subscribe and hit the notice bell so that you don't miss what is coming next. The deeper we dig, the harder it is for deception to survive. And what we uncover next will challenge everything you've been taught. The world was ending when we were children. I was raised to believe that any moment, tonight, tomorrow, God would unleash Armageddon, said one JW.
And Jehovah's Witnesses believe in Armageddon, the final battle between God and all wicked humans. They believe it'll happen any day now.
Armageddon is a battle. It's a battle against the forces of darkness, and the only way to be saved is to actually follow Jehovah and adopt our interpretation of the Bible. That's essentially it.
Listen to this voice. I used to be told I would have to clear the dead from the streets. I was terrified about having to see their bodies.
So as a child, I was really, really terrified. But I used to be told that I would have to clear the dead from the streets, that would be one of my jobs. I used to also get told that my grandparents would die because they didn't believe in God, and that the rest of my mom's family would too. And I was terrified about having to see that and having to see their bodies too.
As a child, every night that you went to bed, you believed this may be your last night. You may not wake up.
Of course, it was always constantly that Armageddon could be coming at any minute.
What does Armageddon look like in the world of the Jehovah's Witnesses?
In my head, it was giant fireballs coming out of the sky and people screaming and dying in front of me.
From infancy, Witnesses' children are fed a steady diet of catastrophe, earthquakes, wars, famine, signs that the end was minutes away. One woman remembers Bible story tapes at bedtime, their violent tales seeping into her dreams.
I used to have terrible nightmares. I had trouble sleeping, and the doctor advised that my mum played me story tapes to get me to sleep. And he obviously meant children's books, but she would play me the tapes from the Bible. And of course, it's full of horrible stories. So before I went to sleep, I would hear these awful stories, or we would listen to what's called My Book of Bible Stories, which is apparently a children's book. So I would listen to those before I went to sleep. I would have trouble getting to sleep.
Until she developed chronic nightmares and migraines before she even turned 10. It is a fearful lullaby, dread as daily bread, and it works. A mind that never feels safe can be controlled forever. We begin with the roots of the mental health epidemic in the Watchtower Society. Nightmares of Armageddon don't fade when the sun comes up. They grow up with you. And in Jehovah's Witnesses, childhood fear matures into something even more suffocating: control. Because you are old enough to question, the next lesson arrives with a knock on the door. Behind it waits the Watchtower's real power. A room, 3 chairs, and men who claim they have the right to your thoughts. The world was ending when they were children. Now they demand if we believe it, living under a microscope. Every witness knows the terror of the knock on the door. The elders want to see you. They laid out 3 chairs in a row. The big electric light on. I didn't realize at that time that what they were doing was actually torture technique.
Basically, they laid 3 chairs out in a row in front of me, and it was a new house that had windows out onto the street, and we only just moved, so we didn't have any curtains or anything, so people were walking past, and they had the big electric light on as they were doing this as well. And I didn't realize at the time that kind of what they were doing was actual torture techniques.
This is also mentioned in another video by Vice. 3 men questioning every intimate detail of your life. Teenagers grilled about their sexual thoughts. Women interrogated about their marriages. Humiliation is called loving discipline.
Peter Gutos was an elder for 15 years and sat on hundreds of these committees.
Most cases would have been fornication, adultery. For each individual, it's quite humiliating because they had to reveal these personal things, that most embarrassing things and private things that they had to reveal it in amongst 3 men. So quite intimidating, and especially for young women to face 3 men about private issues like that. And these men would interrogate them to really find whether they were truly repentant. So the questions were really, really exhausting and humiliating for the victim.
And outside that room, no birthdays, no holidays. High education discouraged until in the recent past. Friendships with worldly people forbidden. The result is a bubble where every job, every conversation can be taken away overnight. Surveillance may keep bodies in line, but it cannot keep the mind from breaking. After years of whispered interrogations and friendships that can vanish in a decree, the pressure doesn't just linger, it corrodes. What starts as a constant watch over every word and gesture begins to slip inward, turning everyday thoughts into battleground. The next chapter isn't just about rules anymore. It's about the human cost when vigilance hardens into illness. This is where obedience becomes sickness. The price of obedience. What does constant fear and control create? Illness. Anxiety becomes a heartbeat that never slows. One former member recalls panic attacks so violent she thought she was dying after elders questioned her private behavior. Depression is everywhere. A physician treating witnesses admitted he had not a single patient who wasn't on antidepressants. And when somebody can no longer endure, before I was 17, I attempted suicide 3 times.
Witness for 23 years. As a teenager, she experienced verbal abuse from an elder and his wife. Later in life, she was disfellowshipped because of the action she took in the hopes of divorcing her ex-husband.
There was a situation, an elder and his wife, both full-time pioneer ministers, were rather abusive to people in the congregation on an emotional, verbal spectrum. Mm-hmm. And I think I took it harder than other people simply because at the time I was already suffering an undiagnosed mental illness. And being a teenager is always tough. You take things far too personally and you're just trying to figure out who you are. So because of it, I had a really rough go with my mental health. And before I was 17, inclusive, I attempted suicide 3 times. The first 2 times, I don't think my parents knew about. But the 3rd time, I ended up in the hospital.
Another one says the only escape from an abusive marriage was that somebody had to die.
You know, we were fighting quite a bit at the time. I was miserable all the time. I just got to the point where I couldn't deal. You know, I just kept packing all of this stuff down. I went probably from being, I'd consider a relatively kind of happy guy, before getting married, to by the end of it, I thought, the only way really out of this marriage was somebody had to die, right? So then it turned to like self-murder, like how can I kill myself, right? That led to eventually an attempt, right?
These are not isolated tragedies. Ex-members advocates speak of countless people who saw no other option but to take their life.
It is really sad to hear this, but because of just how harsh the shunning and treatment of those who leave the organization is, I've mentioned this before, there's been countless people who have saw no other recourse. They entered such a dark period of their life, being cut off by everything they ever known and loved. They saw no other option but to take their life. That's the lowness that they reached, because the organization, the members of their family, their friends, they weren't there for them. They cut them off as if they were nothing. And what's worse is the organization has painted people who've done this. They'll say, well, they're just manifesting a spirit of Judas.
One EX-JW narrated of how his brother committed suicide because he felt if he had continued to live, he would drag his family with him. According to Jehovah's Witnesses, if a family head is not doing well and Armageddon comes, the family or the children will die with him. To avoid that, the man speaks of how his brother committed suicide. Here's a clip.
Before he was disfellowshipped, Nash owned a home building company with his father and his brothers. In 2011, Nash came to work to find that his brother Jared had committed suicide.
And that's why I think there's so many people that are in such dire straits, that were raised witnesses or still are, because there's no worse feeling than thinking, I can't do this, but there's nothing else. Because I know when I was done and I was leaving and it was over, I still thought they were right. I still thought there's no way in hell I'm going to make it. Like I'm going to make this choice because this is best for me and I know this is better, but I'm dead. And that's what he went out thinking, that there's no point in being here because I'm just hurting everybody I'm here with. And I'm going to bring them down with me, because especially when you're the dad, you're the head of the house. And so your kids, like if Armageddon came, like what they believe is if Armageddon came tomorrow and I was with my ex-wife and my kids and I wasn't doing anything, my kids would die with me. That's just because none of them were baptized. And so that's how he felt.
Shunning is the final weapon. Parents cross the street to avoid their own child. A father cut off from his daughter after decades of devotion. As one survivor puts it, within that second, they were never going to speak to me again.
And they made that decision for the good of the congregation that they were going to disfellowship me. And they announced it right away, that I was disfellowshipped from the congregation, and people should avoid, in front of the whole congregation, that people should avoid contact with me, and they gave the reason why, and everybody, like I said, turned around and looked, and
How did you feel in that moment?
Pretty small at that moment. Like, I knew these people my whole life, and within that second, they were never going to speak to me again, and they never did. None of them.
This is a living death, sanctioned, applauded, and enforced. These stories should spark alarm, even reform. Instead, they are met with a polished smiles and official silence. The same organization that demands absolute obedience refuses to own the cost of obedience. As the suffering deepens, the Watchtower presents a different picture. One of cheerful gathering, a perfect faith, a world where pain simply does not exist. Now we step from the quiet despair of followers to the bright stage of leaders. Watchtower denial machine. Ask the leaders about this suffering and you hear silence or scorn. The Watchtower brands those who speak out as evil apostates, deserving of death and mentally diseased. Imagine being clinically depressed and hearing your faith call EX-JWs mentally diseased. Inside the congregations, depression is painted as weak faith. The official treatment is more prayer, more preaching, more obedience. Therapy is worldly. Medication suspect. Members learn to hide their pain, smiling through meetings, while silently unrevering. Publicly, the organization insists Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people on earth.
October 1st, page 8. Paragraph 13, quote, of course, the fact that Jehovah's servants weep over the sorry state of world affairs does not preclude their being happy. On the contrary, they are actually the happiest group of people on earth.
Privately, bodies pile up. For all the darkness that the Watchtower tries to hide, the story doesn't end with silence. Behind the polished conventions and carefully chosen words,
the teaching committee is very grateful to every Bethel department. Each of you has contributed in some way to the spiritually festive events that we enjoy at our conventions and our midweek meetings.
Another reality is unfolding, one that leaders can't suppress. Survivors are walking away, building new lives, and showing the world that the pain they endured is not the final chapter. From the shadows of denial, we move into the light of possibility, breaking the chains. And yet freedom is possible. Listen to the joys in this voice. Life is great. It's been an amazing journey. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Another survivor smiles through tears. Now I finally actually have some hope in life because I can control right now. Former members describe their first birthday parties, the thrill of higher education, the relief of friendships without fear. The cycle of fear ends with children. Therapy, community, and courage to speak have turned isolation into connection, despair into hope. Many become advocates, helping others escape and heal. They prove that happiness, real happiness, lives outside the Watchtower walls. These new beginnings prove that life outside the Watchtower isn't just possible, it can be radiant. But for many still inside, that sunlight feels unreachable. The next step is for all of us. Those who have left, those who care, those still searching, to turn hope into help. Before we end, here is how you can be the lifeline someone is waiting for. If you are inside and still suffering, know this. The world is not a dark and hopeless place you were warned about. People are kinder than you were told. Help is waiting. Call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lines in the US or visit the international helplines. Find ex-witnesses support groups at jwsupport.org or local survivor groups. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. By telling these stories, we shine the light for those who are still in darkness. These voices, the brave survivors, are proof the epidemic is real. The silence is over. Kindly do me one favor. Like, subscribe, and smash the notice bell so that when I upload another video, you receive a notification. And by doing so, you make the message in this video to be seen by more people. If you are interested in another related video that discusses the scandals inside the Jehovah's Witnesses marriages, click on this link.